As I think about our business and our people, the first thing I think is important to say is to apologize to Dr. Dow, his family, the passengers on that flight, our customers, our employees. That is not who our family at United is. And you saw us at a bad moment. And this will never happen again on a United Airlines flight. That's my premise and that's my promise.
Well, that wasn't the first apology out of the gate. That's the United Airlines CEO, Oscar Munoz, apologizing again. He, of course, was talking about this. Passenger forcibly dragged off after he wouldn't allow the airline to bump him. He paid for his ticket, but United needed 4 seats to fly crew members from Chicago to Louisville. 3 other people, after not volunteering originally but being told they were getting off, they did. He did not. Airlines frequently overbook flights, as many of you unfortunately have found out, like myself. Then they offer people vouchers to give up their seats. Now, those could top $1,000 on the high end, but if nobody volunteers, carriers, they are allowed to involuntarily give away people's seats. There is a passenger's bill of rights dealing with things like delays on a tarmac, but this practice is totally allowed. The question I have is, not only should it be, but can it be changed? And we have 4 attorneys here to help us answer that very question. Bill Aaronwald, defense attorney and a former assistant U.S. attorney. Doug Von Oist, founding partner of Carson Von Oist, focusing on corporate misconduct and selected by the Legal 500 as one of the most influential trial lawyers in the country. Mayo Bartlett, an attorney at the law offices of Mayo Bartlett PLLC and a former chief of the Bias Crimes Unit at the Westchester County DA's office. And Mark Furnish, professor at Brooklyn Law. He's argued before the U.S. Supreme Court. Okay. I was joking when we were in the commercial break as Andrew left. We each have our issues that are... This issue has driven me insane for the last 15 years since I was one of these people, not that was dragged off the flight, but was bumped off a flight here for a ticket that I had bought. I'm a capitalist. I believe in the free market system. But if Doug goes to a concert, Mayo goes to a game, you buy a ticket for just about anything else, after they've capped
a ticket for the Islander game, you want to be bumped off. You just
don't bring up that heartbreak for me, Mark. But Bill, I know the passenger bill of rights. I've read the fine print. It doesn't exist. I know that they can do this. But how in any way, shape, or form is this permissible? And why does the airlines have this one carve-out that nobody else does?
Well, it's a good question, but the airline industry is an industry unlike any other. I mean, basically because, you know, they have so many seats on an airplane. There are a lot of no-shows, or there are a lot of people who don't have non-refundable tickets, and so basically what they do is they change their flights and the seat stays vacant, and so airlines traditionally are permitted to overbook. The real question, to my mind, is, you know, when the Department of Transportation, which has jurisdiction over this and passed the Passenger Bill of Rights or enacted it, they talk about voluntary bumping and they talk about involuntary bumping. But they don't define what involuntary bumping means. In other words, what right does an airline have to use physical force to remove somebody from an airplane who has purchased their ticket, who is seated on the airplane? If you're going to overbook and everybody who has a reservation sits down and gets on their seat for a ticket they paid for, those people for whom there were no seats, those are the people who should not be permitted to get on the airplane.
And I want to get, wait a second, I want to get to the lawsuit.
Involuntarily bump anybody off your plane when you're flying?
No, hold on one second, Mark.
Depends on who it is.
And I want to get with Doug in a little bit on the lawsuit in terms of who that gentleman and others can go after and not. And I'm shocked through the courts right now, this thing hasn't been remedied all over. But I have practical questions about this. To Bill's point, people want to switch a seat, okay? People don't show up for flights. But let's be clear. I think everybody knows this. You missed your flight here, you are SOL, okay? You've lost it. They keep your money. But Mayo, here's my point. If we have 100 seats on the flight, airline decides through their metrics that they're going to sell 4 more, okay? Because they believe math shows that only 96% of the people show up or whatever else. And they're trying to make a few extra bucks on top of it. God forbid there's an empty seat on the flight. Why doesn't passengers 101, 102, 103, 104 are notified at point of purchase that they are now buying tickets on a sold-out flight, and that they will be prioritized to be the ones bumped if everyone shows up to said flight. To me, that's the minimum they should do. Why, if I'm the first guy to buy a seat on the plane, am I thrown into this lottery system with somebody who bought it a day or the day of the flight even? It doesn't make any sense to me. There's no equity here for the passenger or the customer.
I've been in that situation recently, and what happened
got
was
dragged off
they
the
didn't
aisle
drag
like
me
that?
off. That was after they took you off, Mark.
But they always take him away, yeah.
What happened
don't even
was
let me on.
basically they offer you money. They offer you a lot of money. They ask for volunteers. That's what's supposed to happen. The Department of Transportation has protocols where you're supposed to ask for volunteers. You're supposed to take the people who are least affected, people who are not in a rush, don't have priorities, and ask for them to volunteer. And normally if they do, they get a compensation unless they can be put on an immediate flight. What happens here is, and then they're also supposed to give you a Bill of Rights if there's an involuntary bump. And what happens is quite often they don't do that. Now, lots of people are interested in the bump because you may make $800 by
And by
just
the way,
catching
they
the
have
next
to
flight.
give you cash. They don't tell you that, but by stat, they have to offer you cash. It's
Well,
not
they can,
just
they
yes.
can offer you cash, or they can give you a credit as well. But what happens
But
is
if you
quite
want
often,
cash, you should be, by at least statute as I read it, you should be able to be required.
But what happens is that we're against regulation. Lots of people are against regulation. Look, Congress certainly can pass legislation to prevent airlines from overbooking, number one. Number two, they can have a non-refundable policy across the board. But certainly...
Or you can mandate they don't overbook.
But when you look
the
at
most insulting
exactly what
practice out
happened
of
here,
this.
Delta recently in 2013 had to settle for $750,000 for doing something similar, not letting people know what their rights are, not first seeking volunteers. Secondly, again in 2009, Delta had $350,000 they lost for the same,
but,
very
and I want
similar
to get
things.
this lawsuit, but Mark, here's my point. There has been major consolidation in every industry seemingly, but airlines certainly not exempt. Basically, there's 5 big carriers. So this idea of this option of choice out there is a misnomer, okay? So to that point, where do we go for remedies when they're using practices, like I said, anywhere else, we buy a ticket, or how about one of our kids? I gave this example before. Kids going to freshman year of college, you're bringing up your daughter, your son. They tell you when you get to school, oh, sorry, we over-admitted students. You got to basically get off our premises, but we'll call you when something opens up. We wouldn't put up with this for anything else. Why is this tolerable right now, and why are they allowed to keep overselling?
Well, I mean, I think the calculation that they make is that each loss is going to be under $1,000 per passenger, and few are going to go to court to vindicate that relatively minuscule of a loss. So I would imagine that the remedy would be some sort of massive class action suit by an enterprising lawyer like our friend
Doug,
here.
to me, let's deal with this existing case. The guy who's dragged off, I'll go through it and you tell me who's probably going to be writing the biggest check. It was actually the Chicago PD who came on there, who did the dragging, okay?
Well, that's
the airline created the environment, certainly, where this took place as well. I got to think this guy's going to get a telephone number for what he had to endure, but is it limited just to him?
Well, it's an assault on an airplane just because the damages don't change just because it's on an airplane. There could be a punitive part of this, that they're like a punitive damages that's awarded to them, and that could be sizable. But if you're looking at it strictly, the damages that the man has, you could see he has a bloody mouth. But it is interesting, the conduct of the police officer, because they knew they weren't making an arrest. They knew that they were actually acting as security for the airplane. So they can't even assert that they were working in their capacity as a police officer, because I don't know any police officer.
Even have police jurisdiction over that
Well,
sort
it
of.
wasn't
But
arrest,
United's got to have
But
exposure
it
here.
was an arrest.
Yeah, of course, United has exposure. Everything that was done there was at the direction of United. The assault took place at the airline's direction.
But the Chicago police did not have to agree to become involved.
That's
They
right.
could have said to the airline, it's your problem.
Well,
This
that's
guy
what I'm
hasn't
saying.
committed a crime. We're not going to put him under arrest. You want us to use physical force? Use your own personnel
Well,
to
that's
do
what
it.
they should have done. So that's why I'm saying the police seem like they're just as much in the mix as the airline.
There's another complication here, to your point
Yeah.
before. You know that you're overbooked because when you buy a ticket, you also select your seat. They don't give out that seat. The seat is no longer available. So if you buy a ticket or you try to get on an airplane and you don't have an assigned seat, then you know that you're
is
going to
that-
be
No,
limited.
no. Just one thing. Actually, that's
Yeah, I
not.
think it does.
No, you can choose to do that. But if you don't choose to have a seat assigned to you, it happened to me before, then you're more prime, candidate to get bumped. But you could have bought it a month beforehand and you haven't been assigned it, so you haven't been formally checked in. I got to hit a break here, guys. Here, I could do this all night. But coming up next, Neil Gorsuch, he's no longer nominee. He is a Supreme Court justice, and he will join the High Court just in time to rule on a bunch of hugely important cases with widespread implications. We'll discuss and debate.